"You're just boring," she said. I stared at my beer. The saying goes, crying in your beer. But I wasn't crying. There wasn't anything worth shedding tears over. Sure, I felt lousy, but mourning? No. What's the point of grieving over a woman who walks away? You don't cry, you replace her. Funny thing is, women are always complaining about the lack of good men. How many times have I heard? All the good ones are either taken or gay. Meanwhile, my buddies sit around talking about how there aren't any women who can keep their word. A lot of guys I know have been burned hard by divorce. Something about that doesn't add up. Maybe people don't realize what they have until it's gone. There's something special about spending years with a partner, learning every tiny habit, every little quirk. I didn't care that she wanted something new, maybe even someone new. What stung was her calling me boring. It felt like she had slowly drained the excitement out of me on purpose, just so she could throw that word in my face. That's not fair, though. She hadn't exactly dumped me. Not yet. What she had done was tell me, plain as day, that she was going to start seeing someone else. Why? Because I was boring. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when I craved adventure. I'd kayak through whitewater rapids in the mountains and weave between islands off the coast. Hell, I even skipped the easy day trips, opting instead for a grueling 12-mile paddle to Long Island. People told me it was too dangerous, but I did it anyway. More than once. I'd camp out on the beach, then make the return trip in the morning. But according to Karen, that wasn't the kind of thing a husband and father should do. My family needed me to be responsible. No more reckless trips, no more risks. The backcountry skiing? Gone. My motorcycle? Stored away. My Triumph Spitfire? Parked and forgotten. Scuba diving, rock climbing, mountain biking, all of it, erased. So, like the good husband and father I was supposed to be, I adjusted. Groomed ski slopes only. Nothing too steep, of course. I traded my dirt bike for a road bike. Signed up for a gym with a climbing wall. And the car? Oh, I drove a minivan. A damn minivan. Forward paneling and everything. Yeah, I know. But I loved her. So to hell with my pride. Once she had reined in my hobbies, she set her sights on my career. Karen hated my business trips. Most were just short hops, 1 or 2 days to close a deal. But sometimes, I had to go international. London, Hong Kong, wherever the company needed me. Those trips lasted longer, sometimes weeks, but they came with hefty bonuses. She hated them. When I finally made partner, the overnight trips became less frequent. I could handle most domestic deals in a single day and catch the red-eye home. Cutting back on international travel took longer, though. It was a catch. 22. Travel and make more money, climb the corporate ladder, or stay home and watch someone else take my spot. No way in hell was I letting that happen. So, I played it smart. I combined trips to maximize the payoff. I pioneered the use of teleconferencing before it became the norm. I even chartered small jets for my team to cut down on wasted time. It ate into my bonuses, but the long game was worth it. Karen was happier, work was thriving, and, most importantly, everything was safe. But you know what? I was bored. I gave up everything for her, changed every part of myself to fit her version of acceptable, and in the end, she still turned around and called me boring. Screw that. Screw her. If she wanted excitement, she could go find it. Meanwhile, I was going to rediscover the version of myself that I actually liked. The guy who hit the motocross track on the weekends. The guy who chased fresh powder down backcountry slopes. The guy who climbed those same mountains in the summer just to conquer them twice. She expected me to sit at home, waiting for her, just in case she needed rescuing from her little date. Seriously? After 25 years of marriage and 4 years of dating before that, I actually thought Karen was smart. Turns out, I was wrong. I didn't agree to any of this. I wasn't staying home. I wasn't waiting up. And if all bets were off for her, then they were off for me too. Love, honor, cherish, forsake all others? Yeah, well, the last one was already gone. Might as well toss the rest out too. When I got home from work, I didn't waste time. I changed into jeans, threw on a sport shirt, and dug out my old boots while Karen was in the shower. She always loved me in boots, riding boots, hiking boots, western boots, you name it. But those were just another thing that had disappeared when I transformed into her version of a safe husband. Or, as I now understood, a boring one. They still fit. Everything fit. Sure, I'd put on some weight over the years, but it was all muscle. My shoulders were broader. My chest was solid. I knew I looked damn good. A dab of aftershave, my best sport coat, and there was no mistaking it. I wasn't waiting up for her. Karen stepped out of the bathroom just as I was lacing up my boots. Her eyes narrowed. "What are you doing tonight?" I smirked. "Nothing. But who says boring can't have class?" I was out the door before she could answer. The minivan sputtered to life. Not exactly the roaring engine I wanted, but it would have to do for now. As I pulled out of the driveway, I caught sight of Karen rushing to the front door, wrapped in her robe. I grinned and ignored the phone when it rang moments later. Voicemail picked up, playing my brand new message. "Hey, this is Dale. Can't come to the phone right now. Probably busy driving or, being boring. If you need excitement, call my wife, Karen, at 555-4269. She'd love to talk about me. Otherwise, leave a message, and I'll get back to you, eventually. Maybe Monday. Ciao." First stop? Getting rid of this damn minivan. I needed something rugged. Something elegant. Or hell, both. Would have loved an old Willis wagon. Maybe even with a surfboard strapped to the roof. But I wasn't about to waste the night searching. Old me, the boring version, would have gone home empty-handed, worried about being practical. New me? I bought 2 cars. A sleek Mercedes convertible. Nothing says elegant like a man behind the wheel of a Benz. And a beast of a Jeep. Massive lift kit, oversized tires, bright fog lights, and a train horn loud enough to make people jump. I took off in the Jeep, letting the dealership deliver the Mercedes to the driveway I used to share with my wife. Karen said I was boring? Not anymore. By Sunday morning, I wasn't even thinking about her. I had bigger plans. I hooked up a trailer and hit the road, not back to our home. No, I went to my mom's house. It had been too long since I visited, and after a 3-hour drive, I pulled into her driveway, feeling alive for the first time in years. Mom had my favorite lasagna waiting. She didn't ask questions. She didn't have to. She knew. She always knew. The next morning, I stepped out to the shed, pulled back the tarp, and smiled. Time to take the Spitfire for a ride. I had stored my Spitfire in my mom's garage for years. My brother took it out every so often to keep it in running condition, but my dirt bike hadn't been so lucky. It wouldn't start, but I didn't need it to. I just rolled it up onto the trailer. By noon, I had the bike and the car secured and, for the first time in years, a real smile on my mom's face. "So, are you going to tell me what's going on?" she asked, watching me with that knowing look only mothers have. I grinned. "Tell you about what, Mom?" She rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on. 25 years of living life Karen's way. You raised 3 kids while burying my son in minivans and bunny slopes. And now, out of nowhere, you show up alone, driving a beast of a truck, hauling your sports car and your motorcycle, and rocking those fine-looking boots. You're not fooling me." Yeah, Mom could read me like a damn book. So, I told her everything. Karen's sudden declaration that I was boring and her brilliant solution of dating other men. Mom shook her head, laughing softly. "That girl might be crazy, but you should be thanking her, honey. She just set you free." She wasn't wrong. Mom was never wrong. That evening, I finally turned my phone back on. Missed calls. Dozens of texts. Karen and the kids had been trying to reach me all day. I ignored Karen and created a group chat with my kids instead. Me, "Hey, I'm fine. I'm at Grandma's. Your mom and I aren't seeing eye to eye on something, so I decided to take some time to think. Figured I'd visit Grandpa's old stomping ground. Ollie, my oldest, Dad. Mom is freaking out. She says you disappeared and won't tell us why." Me, "I'm not gonna lie, but I'm also not going to be the one to explain it. That's between your mom and you. I'll just say this. She decided I'm boring, so I'm doing something about it. If you want to know what she's doing, you'll have to ask her." Jenny, my daughter. Always the peacemaker, Daddy. That doesn't sound like Mom. She's always so careful. She'd never do anything to hurt you or the family. Maybe you should go home and fix this? Me, "Thanks for believing in me, sweetheart. But before you jump to conclusions, why don't you get the full story from your mom? Daniel, my youngest, always the logical one, Dad. We're not taking sides. We just want you both to be okay. Me, I appreciate that, son. Let me know once you've talked to her. Mom and I spent the rest of the night watching some cheesy old movie, laughing like we hadn't in years. Just as I was about to turn in, my phone buzzed again. Jenny, I'm sorry, Daddy. I can't believe Mom actually went out with another man. Me, I know, sweetheart. Jenny, what are you going to do? Me, live my life. Same as always. I'm just not going to live by your mom's rulebook anymore. If those rules were really so important, she would have followed the ones we agreed on in our wedding vows. Daniel, I get it, Dad. Kiss Grandma for me. When I get home next weekend, I want to ride in the Spitfire. Me laughing, deal. Ollie, hell yeah. And we better go somewhere epic for spring break. None of that tame resort skiing. We want heli skiing. Yeah, my kids knew me. They'd seen old pictures, me covered in mud from motocross, carving fresh powder down a mountain. They remembered the version of me before Karen sucked the life out of him. Me, you bet. But you better start training. Backcountry skiing isn't for the weak. Ollie, boring, huh? Yeah, right. Sunday morning, Mom and I grabbed breakfast at our favorite bagel shop, then I stuck around to help her with some chores. Around lunchtime, my phone vibrated again. Another text. Karen. I opened it, and for the first time all weekend, I laughed. Apparently, my Mercedes had been delivered that morning. Since I had the spare keys, all she could do was stare at it, right where it was blocking her car in the garage. I made a mental note to tip the delivery guys extra for that one. I figured it was time to head back. Not home, but back to town. I pulled into the driveway, Karen's car still stuck inside the garage. Without a word, I parked the Jeep, hopped into my new Mercedes, and drove off again. Karen stormed out the front door, waving her arms, trying to flag me down. I barely glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Let her get a good, long look at what was sitting on my trailer, her two worst nightmares. My Spitfire and my Kawasaki. Food for thought. Sweetheart. At least now that I'd moved the Jeep, her side of the garage was clear. Maybe she'd take the hint and leave. Too easy. Boring, she said. I didn't go home. Instead, I hit the mall, picked up enough clothes for a few days, then checked into the Hyatt near my office. Booked the penthouse suite, too. What's the point of all those bonuses if I don't enjoy them? Best sleep I'd had in years. The next morning, I walked into the office like nothing had happened. My team had a deal in Hong Kong that had hit a deadlock. 160 acres of prime industrial property. Perfect timing for me to go over there and shake things up. They were excited. While I was there, they had lined up 3 additional acquisitions. Why wait? I asked when they showed me their reports. We're going over there to buy, not browse. Let the legal team know. We're coming in hot, and they'd better be ready to move. My team exchanged glances. Pack for a month, boss? At least. Maybe longer. We're hitting Sydney after Hong Kong to look at that hotel group. While we're at it, Ian's team will split off to Seoul and Mumbai. If you can't stay the full month, coordinate with a backup from his group. If your family wants to visit, I'll cover airfare and hotels. I wasn't losing anyone over this. A month? My second-in-command, Carter, grinned. Good to see you back, boss. I clapped him on the shoulder. Glad to be back. Then I turned to Kim, our resident numbers expert. Kim, a word? I led her into my office, motioning for my assistant to hold my calls. Especially for my wife. Kim followed, raising an eyebrow. Here's your big break, I told her. This is a high-speed, no-mistakes kind of deal. We'll be buying and selling properties on a tight schedule, moving fast, making big plays. Some deals will be quick flips, others long-term investments. If you handle this right, the senior partners will take notice. This could be the move that gets you out of that junior position. Her lips quirked. So, I'll be at your side 24/7? Exactly. And does 24/7 mean what I think it means? She asked, her voice teasing. I smirked. Karen decided she can date other men. That doesn't mean I'm sleeping my way to a partnership. One woman betraying me at a time is more than enough. She laughed. Had to try. I know. But, I added, When you pick me up in the limo Friday morning, dressed to kill. Even if I'm not interested, I want my wife to think I am. And make sure Jan is our driver. Tell her to wear the uniform with the short shorts. Kim's grin widened. Game on. I had drawn my line in the sand. That was it. No more debating. No more waiting. No more pretending to be someone I wasn't. I drove straight to the airport and rented a plane. For a moment, I toyed with the idea of jumping out of one. Why not? Relax, I wasn't looking to die. But if I was going to reclaim the thrill-seeker I used to be, I had to stop sitting on my ass and do something. I needed a jolt of adrenaline, something to remind me I was alive. And man, did it feel good. I went all in, rented cameras for both me and my jump partner, making sure every second of the experience was documented. And then, just to twist the knife a little deeper, I posted the footage on Facebook before heading to bed. Best night's sleep I'd had in years. The next morning, my phone was flooded. Missed calls, unread texts. The kids were in shock. Karen was in full meltdown mode. The verdict? The kids were impressed. Karen was pissed. Boring. Huh? I wasn't interested in facing her just yet, so I slipped home while she was at work, packed up my things, and booked a late-night flight to Chicago. No real reason, just an excuse to be somewhere else. But while I was there, I checked in on a few business prospects I had on the back burner. It turned into a surprisingly profitable trip and kept me out of Karen's reach until I was good and ready to deal with her again. When I finally got home late Thursday night, the house was dark. Karen didn't roll in until 2 a.m. Alone, thankfully. If she had waltzed in with one of her little boy toys, we would have had a very different conversation. But this way, I didn't have to see her, yet. And that was just fine by me. By sunrise, I was already up, refreshed, and packed for my next adventure. My luggage sat by the door, and I was treating myself to a real breakfast. Steak, eggs, the works. ZZ Top blasted from the kitchen stereo. My coffee was strong, and I felt damn good. I had dressed the part, too. Perfectly tailored gabardine slacks, a crisp, stylish sport shirt Karen hadn't seen before. Something comfortable, but still sharp enough to turn heads. A look that worked for the 18-hour flight to Asia, but also reminded anyone who saw me that I was a man who had his shit together. Karen must have smelled the coffee because she finally made her way downstairs. She froze at the sight of me. Oh my God, Dale. You're home. She looked relieved. Too bad for her. Honey, why didn't you answer my calls? I've been worried sick. I took a slow sip of my coffee. Yeah, the kids mentioned you were freaking out. No need. I'm fine. Just doing as I please. That set her off. Oh no, you don't, mister. I deserve a better explanation than that. I gave her a slow smile. It's a perfect explanation, Karen. Last week, you told me you were going to do whatever you wanted, and I couldn't stop you. So, I figured, if wifey dearest is free to do as she pleases, then so am I. That's the new us, right? Her mouth tightened. I never said you could do whatever you wanted. I said I was going to start dating other men. I nodded. I heard you, but I didn't agree with that. And if you can make a decision that big, regardless of how I feel about it, then I see no reason to consult you on my choices. Her arms folded. There is a reason, Dale. You have a family. You're a husband, a father. You have responsibilities. A man in your position has no business riding motorcycles or racing little sports cars. I thought we settled that years ago. I leaned back against the counter, amused. We did, but things change, don't they? She opened her mouth to argue, but I kept going. Karen, I gave up everything for you and the kids. I drove a minivan, for crying out loud. I spent years on bunny slopes instead of mountains. I haven't jumped out of an airplane in decades, until this week. And you know why? I set my coffee down. Because I was bored. Her face paled. The kids are grown, Karen. They have huge college funds. And here's something you don't know. Each of them has a trust fund that matures when they graduate. They'll have enough money for grad school and a down payment on a house. They'll be fine no matter what happens between you and me. She swallowed. And what about me? I let out a slow breath. You? Karen, I hate to break it to you, but I don't think I have a wife anymore. Her eyes widened. Now, just hold on, Dale. That's a pretty big leap. We're just exploring things. And you're already acting like. I cut her off. Like I know exactly where this is going? Silence. Karen, if I actually mattered to you, you never would have given me that ultimatum. Her lips parted. I shook my head. You think I'm boring? Fine. Easy fix. I'll just stop being boring. But here's the thing. I gave up a lot to be the family man you wanted. And if that guy isn't enough to keep you happy, then I don't see any reason to keep playing the role. Right on cue, the doorbell rang. Kim and Jen stepped inside, heels clicking against the floor as they walked in like they owned the place. 4 of the best legs you've ever seen. And yeah, I looked damn good in my gabardine slacks, but I looked even better with their attention on me. Jen greeted me with a hug and a kiss on the cheek before she started shuttling my luggage to the limo. Kim handed me a dossier and launched straight into business, rattling off the latest updates on our negotiations. Karen was already on edge, but the minute she heard the project names, her eyes went wide. Hong Kong? Sydney? Buenos Aires? How long are you going to be gone? I shrugged. A couple of months. Plenty of time for you to explore before you're too old. Her face twisted. Dale, come on. We need to talk about this. About our relationship. Where it's going. I sighed, grabbing my passport. Wrong tense, Karen. Our relationship isn't going anywhere. It's gone. And right now? So am I. She started throwing out desperate arguments. Pleas that could have won her an Oscar. But I didn't hear a word of it as we walked out the door. Then, right as I stepped into the limo, she spotted my Jeep, my Spitfire, and my Mercedes convertible, all parked in front of the garage. Her garage, which meant she couldn't get her car out. Her face turned red. She opened her mouth, and what came out was too obscene to write here. I smiled as the limo pulled away. Boring. Huh? Hong Kong was incredible. Kim was in the suite beside mine. Strictly business, just like we agreed. And damn, was she good at her job? We closed every deal we set out to win. And I wasn't looking back. While my team and I closed several deals, we also set up follow-up teams to return in a month to finalize the remaining acquisitions. Australia turned out to be just as successful, and we walked away with an agreement in principle to acquire an entire hotel group. Another closing team would handle that one, but the groundwork had been laid. From there, we pushed forward to Argentina. Once again, I managed to strike a deal with a motivated seller while my team scouted new opportunities for future expansion. Through it all, despite everything, I stayed faithful. I kept my vows, clinging to the ridiculous hope that I'd return home to a Karen who realized she had made a mistake. Maybe she'd be desperate to reconcile, to undo the damage she'd caused. Because the truth was, yeah, Karen had gone off the deep end, but I still loved the crazy woman. I wasn't ready to throw her away. So, I told myself her ultimatum was less about betrayal and more about a new definition of marriage. Open. Free. Do what we want. No consequences. If she could rewrite the rulebook, then I could play by it too. Enter Carrie Moore, an old college friend who had built a successful career as a personal buyer for wealthy tourists in Hong Kong. She spent a day showing my team around the famous markets, and before we left, she sent me to a tailor for a few made-to-order suits. By the time we moved on to Sydney, I had a new wardrobe, and Carrie had thoroughly reacquainted herself with my body. I won't lie, it was exactly what I needed. A woman I trusted, a luxury suite in an exotic city, an entire night of raw, unfiltered lust. For about 10 minutes afterward, I felt guilty. Then I remembered. Karen wrote the damn rulebook. Boring, she said. I had never been boring, but I had been bored. Carrie? Not boring in the slightest. And judging by the way her body trembled and shook beneath me, I sure as hell wasn't boring to her. From Sydney, we pushed forward to Buenos Aires. The business opportunities were plentiful, but I also met a fiery Latina divorcee who taught me a thing or two about tango, both the upright version and the one that happened between silk sheets. As we wrapped up our final deals, I sent my team home one by one on commercial first-class flights. Then, a few days later, I took a private lease jet. Turns out, the flight attendant was very enthusiastic about welcoming me to the Mile High Club. She also happened to have a friend on board, which meant I got a crash course in the etiquette of threesomes at 40,000 feet. It had been a great trip, but I wasn't done yet. I took my freshly tanned body to Canada for a bit of skiing before heading home. The kids had wrapped up their finals early, so I met them at the resort a week before Karen expected them back for Christmas. And let me tell you, we skied. None of that tame resort crap. We hit steep, powder-packed slopes that could only be reached by helicopter. By day, I tore down mountains with my kids. By night, I tore the clothes off of a voluptuous blonde housewife I met at the lodge bar. Her husband had traded her in for a younger model, leaving her lost and unsure of what to do next. So, I hired her. After our third night together, I decided her talents, particularly her multilingual talents, which she demonstrated impressively during her screaming orgasms, would be an asset to our growing international business. I offered her a generous salary, a housing allowance, and covered her relocation costs to become my newest personal assistant. Of course, hiring her meant we had to stop sleeping together. I still had some business ethics, unlike my wife, who had no marriage ethics left at all. By the time we flew home, the kids were already done with Karen. I, however, had one final obligation: Christmas. I didn't plan on dealing with Karen and jet lag at the same time, so I checked into a hotel near the office for a few days. I also bought myself a penthouse condo as a Christmas gift. Then, when the time came, I went to my former home to spend Christmas Day with my kids. My cars were still parked right where I left them, blocking the garage. Karen had gotten herself a little Mini Cooper convertible and had parked it in front of my Spitfire. I figured she'd be livid about my lineup of vehicles still holding her hostage. But when she opened the door, she greeted me like nothing had happened. Maybe I wasn't boring to her anymore. I went through the Christmas motions, enjoyed the feast, helped with the dishes, took out the garbage. Then, after everyone went to bed, I pulled my Mercedes and Spitfire into the garage and left in my Jeep. Karen called. I let it go to voicemail. She must have realized I wasn't entirely opposed to civility, because she suggested we keep a Christmas truce for the kids' sake. Fine. I stayed a couple of days. Slept in the guest room. The morning after Christmas, I took my cars one by one to be washed. For months of sitting in the elements hadn't done them any favors. But, on some level, I also enjoyed the fact that Karen had to see them every day. A reminder that things had changed. Then, the second day after Christmas, Karen did what Karen does best. She ruined it. Her boyfriend came over for lunch. She looked smug about it. I went upstairs, grabbed my bag, and left. Full-scale war was back on. The kids? They were furious. Karen hadn't expected that. They didn't say goodbye to me. They said goodbye to her. We threw their bags in the Jeep and drove downtown. For New Year's Eve, we lived it up. Museums by day, clubs by night. The kids met up with friends, and I managed to find some company of my own. By the time I went back to work, I had eaten, drank, and partied my way through enough experiences to last a lifetime. But the best part? I wasn't done yet. My business trip across the Southern Hemisphere had boosted my status in the company and put me on the radar of our competitors. I wasn't subtle about it. I let my team know that if I left, I was taking them with me. Word spread fast. Senior partners took notice. And soon, I was sitting across from Karen's father, Mr. Adams, the company founder and CEO. I had expected the usual detached, business-like approach from him, but he cut straight to the point. Dale, a lot has changed for you recently. You've done exceptionally well at work, but I hear you've lost a battle or two with my daughter. Do I need to worry about you? I leaned back in my chair, completely at ease. Yes, sir. You do. Then I laid out the facts. I had brought in more business in the past 5 years than any other manager. My Asian Blitz had been the most profitable initiative the company had ever seen. My bonuses were higher than even the division presidents. And yet, I was still a junior partner. I'm thinking about taking the severance package and moving on. Adams frowned. Dale, I can't promote you like anyone else. You're my son-in-law. It wouldn't look right. I smirked. I get it. Business is business. But that cuts both ways, Mr. Adams. And right now, business says I can be a full partner at 2 competing firms tomorrow. Long story short, the arrogant bastard told me to go ahead and do my worst. So I did. By the end of the day, every member of my team, plus Ian's, had handed in their resignations. Suddenly, I had the leverage. By morning, I was a senior partner with a huge raise and a newly created mergers and acquisitions division under my control. With my career and finances locked in, I turned to my personal life. I gave Karen a divorce, and I gave Carrie an engagement ring. She skydives. After all, I got everything. A fresh start, a good woman, a shitload of money, and a whole lot of adrenaline. If Karen had just come to me and said, "I'm bored, let's find something exciting together," I would have been thrilled, but she didn't. So now, she gets to live with the fact that I'm the one who won. The truth is, I was bored too. If Karen had just said something, just talked to me, we could have found our way back to excitement together. We could have skied side by side, with me teaching her the thrill of carving fresh powder. We could have traveled the world, explored new places, rafted wild rivers with just enough risk to make it exhilarating but not reckless. Hell, we could have zipped through Cambodia, feeling the rush of adventure without a real danger in sight. I would have done anything for her, until she threw me away for someone else. That, I couldn't stomach. I hear she's miserable in the dating scene now. The men available to her? Not up to her standards. She thought she was trading up, but instead, she found herself in a market full of disappointments. She's jealous, too. Her own father is thrilled with me for walking away from her. Because, in doing so, I took his company to new heights, making them obscene amounts of money while she sat on the sidelines, realizing too late what she had lost. She regrets it. She knows she can't go back. Carrie makes sure of that. Every time she straps on a parachute or clicks into her ski bindings, she reminds me, and the world, that she's my partner now. But my ultimate adrenaline rush? That's going to bed with Carrie every night. There isn't a single thing she won't try. Not a single thing we haven't explored together. And more importantly, there's nothing we've done that she doesn't want to do again. That never happened with Karen. Not even in our best years. We haven't spoken since the day her father had to restrain her just so I could walk away. I imagine she'd like to talk, maybe even beg for some kind of closure. But she knows exactly how little I want to do with her. One day, I suppose, I'll have to see her again. Maybe when one of the kids gets married, or when the first grandchild is born. Karen will be there, and so will I. But I'm not worried. Carrie will be right by my side, not to protect me, not to shield me from Karen's regrets, just to make sure I'm never boring or bored. Dear readers, if you've stuck with me this long, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below, hit like, share this with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories. Because trust me, this ride isn't over yet.